Wait a minute. Oh, here we go. Happy June. Happy June. We're going to go ahead and get started. Had a little bit of technical difficulties. I like to say that it's merchant mayhem when things don't start working. But I think we're ready to get started. We do have some folks virtually. I think that says Joyce Main. I think.
Yeah, Joy.
Thank you. All right, so we are ready to get started. I'm going to call our June meeting to order at 9:39 a.m. All right, so we'll just start off. We are a little light today. Looks like some people had maybe already had their last day of school and are not with us. No, just teasing, just teasing. We are a little light today. So first thing I want to do, first order of business, is to recognize our guests. Are there any guests joining us today? Nope. No guests today, so it's just us, just the PSTEB family. All right, public comment. Do we have public comment today? Nope, no public comment. This is going great. No public comment. Already ahead of schedule. Look at us. All right. Mr. Hands, are you ready for the state board update? Okay. So we'll go ahead with our state board update.
Good morning, and sorry, this is a little tall here, so there we go.
That's okay. I'm a little short.
Good morning, Chair Kitchen, members of PSTEB. Just wanted to provide a quick update from this last state board meeting on May the 21st. The state board had the privilege of recognizing the recently announced 2024-2025 Maryland Teachers of the Year. The full list of the Teachers of the Year and the ceremony that we had at the board is available on our website. It was very great to have them with us on the 21st. The state board also recognized Bradley Absher and Maggie Arnold as recipients of the 2023 Milken Educator Awards. The state board also voted unanimously to approve the use of $350,000 credited to the Public Education Partnership Fund to support the administration of best instructional practices in the science of reading as part of MSDE's comprehensive literacy plan. The state board also voted unanimously to adopt a joint implementation policy with the Accountability and Implementation Board to provide a timeline for LEAs to meet the minimum school funding requirement as mandated in the Blueprint for Maryland's Future. And I'm happy to provide a copy of that joint resolution. It's also on the state board website. Just a couple of other brief highlights. The board received an overview from Ms. Meadows of the current educator workforce in Maryland. Very great and thorough presentation, and I'm sure you probably already shared that with them. The state board received an update on recommendations from the special education work group and an overview of the MSDE 2025 education budget following its recent finalization during the legislative session. And then we had our usual opinions and orders for the month, and that is about all the board did in May. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Nope, no questions.
Great.
I think you're free to go.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so next up is our communication update. And so I like to use this time to kind of open up to our members about anything that is coming from their constituent groups or stakeholders that you want to bring back for us to know. I'll open it up to the board. Yep.
We all received an email from Dr. Ebony Shockley Terrell, and I just wanted to go on the record sharing the things that she wanted to be announced. Is this the time for announcements? No.
Not an announcement, but this would be a communication update.
That's what I thought. Mm-hmm. Okay. So the first is just calling the board's attention to Montgomery County. It's undergoing budget review, which may include not honoring open contracts to recent graduate hires. And so PSTEB members may want to watch the meeting on June 11th or just be aware and, be thinking about how that, I don't know that we can make a statement or anything, but
That might not
it's
necessarily
an
be
area of
in
concern.
our purview, because let me make sure I understand what you're saying. So let me clarify first. So in terms of Montgomery County not offering open contracts to recent hires?
Correct.
Recent graduates.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So I
who
don't
were
know if
hired.
that's necessarily in our purview, right, Kelly? I mean, if it's more so because it's not like they're not hiring them, and we know that there's a shortage, but they're just not offering open contracts, correct? Am I understanding it correctly? No. Okay. Please clarify.
My understanding with Montgomery County is they did offer some open contracts and then they rescinded them.
Okay. I don't think that's necessarily in our purview. Kelly, please correct me, but that could be something that the local association is probably on top of.
Yeah, it's just something to be aware of in
Okay.
terms of the context of what can affect the teacher pipeline. That if folks are hearing that contracts aren't being honored, that might eventually lead to a continued disinterest in the profession. And then I guess the second thing is an announcement, so I'll just hold.
Okay. Yep. Dr. McGee.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Alex, this is a shout out to you and your team. I want to thank you because we had Dr. Ashby Bay schedule and actually come on campus all the way out in Western Maryland for Frostburg to meet with our team and talk to our advanced coordinators and also our initial certification coordinators. It was an awesome meeting. So she was just lovely and had so much information. She came with a notebook. It was wonderful. So I just want to, I know y'all have been working so hard, and I feel like I'm always kind of going, I need, and I want to say thank you, because served so well. To you also, Kelly, I know you're part of that. So thank you both. It was just really nice. So.
Thank you for sharing that. I know we've, over the last few months, I know we've had some questions or concerns about technical assistance and technical support to our IHE. So it's good to hear that, and that I guess you did, or Frostburg did, reach out, and that showing that MSDE is responsive to the needs of the
Yes.
IHEs.
And I mean, physically on main campus, that's a drive. So, I mean, that's commitment. So just want it noted somewhere in the notes. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other communication updates?
Good morning, everyone. I just had a few concerns from people in my building under the changes or the blueprint. And so I have my principal who's been in the position, he's been an administrator for 20 years. And then I have the ILT in my building, she's been in for 10 years in her position. So they're just really concerned about whether or not they have to do their national board certification under their position, or whether or not they would be grandfathered into the position, and if they would have to go through that process. So those were some of the concerns. And I've heard that not only in my building, but throughout the county. Thank you.
So let me ask you a question with that. And so I think of like PSTEB with situations like this, we're very high level. So I'm just curious to know what communication is coming from Pete. Yeah, because I feel like, when we're here talking about it, we're thinking like very high level statewide, but those concerns are probably concerns that maybe other districts or other school teams possibly have. So what communication is coming from
I haven't heard anything from certification, but I did hear from the office with the mentor teachers. Most of them are going to go through the national board certification process. But my principal, I don't think he's up for going through the process, or the ILT, because they've been in the position for so long and they don't feel like they need to go through it. And so I'm not getting any clear direction from our certification office. I haven't seen anything.
Okay, Kelly?
Well, this is a perfect time for me to give an update on the administrator licensure / principal tier of the career ladder work group.
We set that up perfectly today.
I know. Thank you. So that work group has met twice. I anticipate we'll meet at least 2 or 3 more times because the work is robust. Part of that work is to determine, based on the statute, we're going to make recommendations to the State Board of Education that will also have to consult with this board once they kind of, so the recommendations will come to both boards because this board will consult and the state board will eventually make the decision. But the law says that they will develop criteria to move to the licensed principal tier of the career ladder. That same law also says, starting in, I think, 28, 29, don't quote me on that, is where it says that licensed principals do need to be nationally board certified or be eligible for a waiver, which is also recommended, that eligibility criteria, by the state board. So the work of the work group is to make recommendations on what is the eligibility criteria to move to that licensed principal tier and what potentially is a reason to waive that criteria of the national board certification. So the reason that our administrators haven't heard a lot of information about that yet is because the work is still happening. And until the state board actually sets the criteria, that's when we would blast out all the technical assistance. At the same time, I do want to bring your attention to the fact that the Accountability and Implementation Board have published a career ladder FAQ document. I think their version 2.0 just went out yesterday to our LEAs who are developing their career ladders. And that FAQ document does touch on those sorts of questions as well. Let me find it. I'm not sure if it's on their website. Let me find it for you.
Any other communication updates? No communication updates. All right. Darren, did you have an update for the group? Nope. Okay. All right. In terms of my communication update, Kelly, I really had a question that you just answered it, like what was going on with the admin work group. So you just answered it. And then I think everything else will get to for this this meeting. Sorry. Now back to announcements.
Just sharing and drawing your attention to a conference that's being held at University of Maryland College Park in collaboration with Prince George's County Public Schools. It's our Education, Innovation, and Improvement Center that is collaborating with Prince George County, and they're hosting a conference. The flyer came in the email. It is focused on, let's see, it's a showcase on current, I forget what NIC stands for, but current initiatives between the university and school districts. So some of the objectives are to showcase the learning and results of the two NICs, highlight emerging promising practices and challenges in fostering mathematical reasoning and social emotional learning, and it's a full-day conference. So just check your email.
Thanks. Dr. Zebley?
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Today is my last day.
Today is your
And I want to say thank you to this board for being so welcoming. I wasn't sure I really wanted to join this board when I was asked because it looked like, well, it's a lot. And I didn't know that I wanted to be here. And then I got here and I was met with just warmth and welcome from day one, from the staff at MSTE to every other member of this board. And it has been a pleasure being here, getting to know you all as individuals, and doing this work. So just thank you so much.
Yes. Best of luck on your new endeavor. Best of luck on your new endeavor. And so being a Delawarean, I feel like at Delaware, many of us held positions into your new employment because they heavily recruited at UD for part-time work. So best of luck there. They are going to love you. Super excited.
So I just want to say thank you to everyone. This is my last day as well. My term ends. So I have truly enjoyed working on the board. It has been a wonderful experience. And this has been a great board working with everyone. I do apologize I wasn't able to attend the last several meetings due to testing and teacher shortages and subbing. But I'm always thinking about what you all are doing on the board, and some really great work. And you all always have a special place in my heart. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm scared to ask. Any other announcements? Right, I don't know.
So
Think we need new seats in July.
this is not a long-term permanent departure. Just a heads up that you may see someone else sitting in this seat for the next couple months. I am going to be using the remainder of my parental leave starting June 17th. So I anticipate that I'll miss. When is the September meeting? Do we know? Is it the?
It's the 12th, I think.
So then I will likely miss the July and August meetings, but I should be back in time for the September meeting. So don't be surprised if you have a better looking council. Is all I'll say. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right, so do I loosely need to ask everyone to RSVP? Like, is anybody else leaving? Okay. All right, thank you for that. We won't miss everybody over summer break and new faces. All right, April meeting. So they were sent out with the materials. Hopefully you had a chance, but if you want to peruse them again. Not the April meeting, the May minutes. I'm sorry, May minutes. Just 1 second. So Kelly, these go as edits to the May meeting, or what is this?
So that is a copy of what Dr. Shockley had
Okay.
sent. So the very first thing is an edit to the May meeting minutes, and I've already shared this with Nicole.
Okay.
Dr. Gibson's name is misspelled.
Are there any additional edits? Yep.
Yes, it's listed that I was absent and I was present under the members who were
Okay.
absent.
So Dr. Allen was present at the meeting. Any other?
Alita, it's Joy.
Go ahead.
So it's somewhere in here, maybe I've missed it, but it was suggested that you meet with Liz prior to the Blueprint Committee's next meeting, May 29th, to discuss our concerns. Is that noted somewhere and I'm missing it?
I don't see it in here, but I wrote down before June, so I did not meet with Liz because I wrote down before the June. I didn't see it in here. It was in my notes for June, so I apologize for the oversight because I wrote down.
Yeah, it was going to be before May 29th and their next meeting was 6/26 after that. That's what I wrote down.
Mhm. It's not in here, but we can add that in there.
Okay, thank you.
Any other? Yes.
It's just very minor. Miss Bobbitt, she's missing her title of Ms. in front of her name.
Yes.
If we could add that, please.
Thank you.
Other edits or revisions? Okay. Without objection, I move that we approve the May minutes with the corrections that were listed. No objections. Oh, did you have one?
No, I was just gonna, I
Yeah.
know if I had a second.
No. All right. We are way ahead on our meeting. So Kelly, do we need to maybe adjust the agenda because is Jason Keys here, or do we need to actually wait to 10:35? Oh, there you are. I didn't know that you were sitting. Right, we are on it. Today's meeting is giving me like last week of school vibes. Let's hurry up, get through this so that we can go. All right.
All right, are we, am I good to go?
Just a second. Let us get our packet.
Oh, not a problem.
All right, I think we are ready. All right. Think everybody's ready? Everybody's got, yep, I think we are ready.
Yes, great. Okay, well, thank you so much for hosting me, everybody. I've actually been watching this board's meeting since late last year, so it's really great for me to be here and actually talk to you all in person. It's for my first time meeting a lot of you. So my name's Dr. Jason Keys, and I work for Kelly and Alex in the Division of Educator Effectiveness as the manager of Educator Preparation Program Approval. A little bit about my background. Excuse me. I have a little bit of a cough today, so if I cough, please excuse me in advance. But my background, I just retired 6 days ago from the U.S. Air Force after 21 years of service there as an intelligence specialist. You're clapping now, and I appreciate it, but wait. You're doing this before the presentation. You may not feel as inclined to clap afterwards. We'll see how this goes, but I do appreciate the clapping. But I came on board actually at the beginning of this year. MSDE was gracious enough to participate in a transition assistance program for active duty personnel. And they brought me on board because my background is in program evaluation, right? I was an intelligence specialist for a number of years, but the latter part, thank you, Kelly, the latter part of my career, I really focused on the evaluation of different types of programs, training and development programs for a number of professions to include teachers all around the country. And I mean from here to Alaska and Hawaii and a bunch of places in between, right? My published research is actually focused on evaluating the efficacy of educator preparation programs during the COVID-19 pandemic, right? So I really love this stuff, and I was really happy that the second career I'm gonna have in my life is here at MSDE, working with folks such as yourself. And it's so great because today I get to talk to you about what we are doing at MSDE to really implement the regulations that were adopted by this group and the Board of Ed at the end of last year, which are the regulations that govern educator preparation programs. And so with that, I'm gonna launch into looking at the design, the development, and the implementation of what our team is going to be doing from here on out.
Yeah, so before you get started, I want to say thank you for your service. I am an Air Force wife. My airman did 24 years active duty before he retired, so it's nice to see a fellow face, fellow, military face in here, and so thank you so much for your service, and, I understand the work.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I'm very happy to be here. There's probably not a better place I could have landed post-military than working here with you all, in a public service mindset once more, right? So with that, let me talk about what we're going to be doing, what I'm going to be talking about today. Really, this presentation is in three quick parts. I'm going to talk about the design of our formal review process for educator preparation programs around the state. I'm then going to talk about our actual processes and procedures. We're going to dive in a little bit as to what my team is actually going to be doing out there on a day-to-day basis in collaboration with our educator preparation programs. And then I'll talk about what everyone's reporting requirements are and sort of the next steps as we are looking at the latter half of 2024 and beyond. So with this first part, I'll talk about the background, kind of how did we get here to where we are today, what's some of the history. We'll talk about the members of our team and our scope of responsibility across the state. We'll talk a little bit about our nationally accredited providers, but the majority of this presentation today is going to focus on our providers who are not nationally accredited. I'll talk about what that means in this presentation. And then finally, at the end of this section, I'll talk about the research that informed the design of how we're going to evaluate educator prep programs around the state. So the background, as this board all knows, Blueprint was signed into law back in 2021, and at the end of 2023, this board and the Board of Ed approved two significant regulatory changes, right? Repeal and replacement of these two COMARs that are listed there. The top COMAR, Programs for Professionally Licensed Personnel, that is the COMAR that governs what my team does on a day-to-day basis. That is the COMAR that we are setting out to implement. So as you all have adopted that COMAR, it's now my team's job to make sure that what you all wanted to happen is happening out there. So throughout this presentation, if I say that things that we are doing are coming from the COMAR or coming from COMAR, that is the COMAR I'm referring to, 13A0706. So it was adopted by this board in November, adopted by the Board of Ed in December. The next month in January, MSTE got right on it and stood up a whole team in order to implement those COMAR. And specifically, we're here to design, develop, and implement a state approval and review process for educator preparation programs. That team consists of three of us. There's myself, there's Dr. Juanita Ashby-Bay, and thank you so much, Dr. McGee, for giving her a shout out earlier. She is fantastic to have on the team with us, as well as Mr. Keith Krempel. Both Juanita and Keith come from educator prep programs, so they bring a perspective that I don't have. Right? They've been faculty, they've been department chairs, but most importantly, at least in my view, they've worked on the teams in educator preparation programs that help their deans and directors get prepared for accreditation and state reviews. So they have lived the other side of this. And so it's great to have them on the team because they are bringing the perspective of what I would like to say is the voice of the customer. So as we're designing and developing and implementing, they bring the great perspective of, hey, here's how what we are going to do, what we are planning to do could affect our EPPs. And so it's fantastic to have them on board. There are three of us, and there are 36 different providers around the state. This is our scope of responsibility at this point. We have 22 traditional educator prep programs out there, 14 alternative, 706 programs as of today. And we put on the slide that 706 and growing, because not a week goes by that someone doesn't interact with me and say, hey, I have an idea about a new program. So I bet if we were to sit here 365 days from now, that number would be higher. So Section 11208 in the law does allow providers a choice. It says that they can choose to go nationally accredited, or they can traverse a state review and approval process. For the providers that choose to go nationally accredited, and 13 out of our 36 providers are nationally accredited, they don't traverse a state review and approval process, and instead they're going to operate with their accreditor. That accreditor is going to do their regular reviews on a 3, 5, 7-year basis. It really depends on the accreditor and what level of accreditation they're getting. But their regular oversight is really handled by the accreditor. There is still oversight by us as well. We still have our finger on the pulse of how things are going in these programs because we still require, per the law, annual reporting from all providers, whether they are accredited or not. And I'm going to talk at the end of this presentation about what that annual reporting entails. But the spoiler alert is that it's all the items from the law and the regulations. That's what we're asking them to provide to us. So everything that you have asked for is what we are asking them for. Accreditors, per that same section of the law, accreditors need to be recognized jointly by MSTE and MHEC. So we have been working in a really great fashion with our MHEC partners to develop what the criteria was to recognize them, to develop an application for the accreditors. We sent our applications to the accreditors that are out there. There are two. One is called CAPE, which is the Council for the Accreditation of Educator Preparation, and the other one is called AQEP, which is the Association for Advancing Quality in Educator Preparation. There are only two of them in the country. We have engaged with both of them. They have both submitted applications to us. We are now jointly reviewing those with MHEC, and we're actually meeting with those accreditors this week and next week to continue this recognition process. So it's actually proceeding at a great pace. I'm really happy with the collaboration that we've had with MHEC, and we're looking forward to recognizing one or both of those accreditors as we can, as soon as we can.
Excuse me, Dr. Keys, what is IAW? This is MSDE, IEW, Comar.
In accordance with.
Okay, thank you.
So before I get into the actual nuts and bolts of what we're actually going to be doing day to day when we evaluate educator prep programs, I did want to talk a minute about how we got to where we are from a design perspective. Was it me and Dr. Ashby Bay and Mr. Krempel sitting in a room together, throwing spaghetti at a wall and just deciding how we're going to evaluate EPPs? Absolutely not, right? And so it started with scholarly research. So we looked at a number of peer-reviewed journals. We looked at a number of publications from the Department of Education and other professional organizations from social scientists who didn't study EPPs. They studied the evaluation of EPPs. They studied how states evaluate EPPs. And they looked at what data works as far as us gauging the efficacy of these programs. What data doesn't work? What methods should we be using to collect our data? And what methods do states feel work, but they don't actually work, right? And so this was great for us to get, large 30,000-foot views of, what should we be doing as we build this process. We then connected with our NASTEC partners. I'm going to skip ahead one slide here. So NASTEC is the National Association of State Directors of Teacher Education and Certification. These are professionals all across North America who are wholly invested in teacher education and certification. I've been really trying to figure out how would I really describe this organization and our partners, and so I'll refer to my boss, Kelly, over here. So we're all familiar with how steeped in knowledge Kelly is as far as our regulations and how everything goes. I've watched these meetings and everyone turns their heads to Kelly whenever they have questions about these areas of interest. So what my team did is we reached out to the Kellys of dozens of other states. We connected with the Kellys of dozens of other states and their teams, and we coordinated with them for months. And what we did, and I'm going to go back, what we did is I got a chance to really talk to them and say, how are you doing your state review and approval process in your state? What's working for you? We know what the social scientists are saying at the 30,000-foot level, but in reality, what's happening? Like, what are you doing? What's working? What's not? Some of my favorite questions to ask them were, if you could start all over, if you could burn it all to the ground, what would you do differently? And they told us that. The other thing, the other pie in the sky question I asked was, get this, if resources were no option, right? If resources were no option, what would we do? Like, how would we carry out these evaluations of programs? And it's not that resources are no option in Maryland. That's not the point. The point was to get their creative juices flowing and to let us know what they think we should do, right? These were fantastic partners. They gave us insight into all of their best practices. They were so open and honest with all of their paperwork or all their documentation, all their protocols, everything they use, they gave it to us. They gave us written permission to use them, to modify them as we see fit, to incorporate them into Maryland's state review and approval process. It was such a fantastic partnership with our counterparts across the state. I was really proud of how our very nascent team at the time was able to engage with our partners across the nation and really glean insight into what are the best practices. And what this helped us do ultimately was build a curve, right? A bell curve of like what's normal, like what's actually normal and consistent across the nation, and what's more on the outskirts, right, of that. And we wanted to make sure that, yeah, we're not too far left or right of what's considered a best practice, but at the same time, we wanted to build a program that's, fits Maryland's unique needs, and that's, it's going to work best for Marylanders. And so we really enjoyed that partnership, and we still continue those partnerships to this day. We then did a review of documents and artifacts from other state departments of education all around the country. And this was really going to a lot of their websites, sometimes contacting my counterparts over there. But generally speaking, Department of Ed do a really good job of putting a lot of this information out there for the public to see. And so once more, we're able to look and see what are our counterparts doing out there? What documents are they using? What are their policies and procedures? What regulatory guidance do they follow? All of this to help us determine what's best for us here in Maryland, right? And finally, feedback from our EPP leaders. So we have done so much outreach, and we're still continuing it at this point, but we have done surveys, we've done technical assistance in person, we've done virtual technical assistances. Dr. McGee was so nice to point out Dr. Juanita Ashby Bay, who's one of my colleagues. We've actually signed her and Keith as permanent liaisons to our EPP. So our EPPs have a direct line into MSTE. So however they want to contact us, right? Email, phone call, carrier pigeon, smoke signal, it doesn't matter. Like, we are here to support. And I think we've gotten a lot of good feedback from our EPPs as we were designing this process of what's going to work for you, what's not, what sort of data do you collect, how easily could you provide this data to us, hypothetically, if we were to ask for it in a review. And all of this really helped formulate how we were going to conduct these reviews. The very bottom bullet on this slide is the what. Everything above it is the how. This is the what. So blueprint criteria, the regulations that came out of this body and the Board of Ed, as well as MSTE priorities, like priority 2 is ready to read, right? Those helped us determine what we are going to evaluate. It was very easy because you all had passed brand new regulations, and so that was very easy to us to say, yep, we know what we need to evaluate. It's right there in black and white for us. So I wanted to spend a moment on this slide just so that you understood as we dive into what we're going to do, that this is how we arrived at those conclusions. So in this part, I'll actually talk about the components of our review. I'll talk about the timeline. I'm not going to go too in-depth of each of the 9 phases, but I will give you just the wave tops because we're not going too deep into it, right? We're going to talk about data triangulation and what data we're going to actually triangulate to assess the efficacy of these programs and really looking at compliance, right? How are they compliant with the regulations that have been passed by this body? We'll talk a little bit about review determinations, but quite frankly, those came from you all. Those are from the regulations, so there should not be anything new on that side for you all. And then we'll talk about how we're recruiting our reviewers for our formal reviews and who's going to actually be on these review teams.
Dr. Keys, can I just stop you right there just to do a quick temperature check? We're good so far? Any questions? Just to make sure that we're all okay. Thank you.
So on the slide, you're going to see our review components. And before you try to read all this, because there's a lot of bullet points and there's a lot going on, I think it may be easier if I just kind of explain what these are and how we arrived at them. So this body is very familiar with COMAR, right? And building COMAR and writing it. And so for us, when we open up a COMAR, we got it. We can read it very easily. The lay person out there, when they open up a COMAR, it can be kind of a shock to this system, right? It can be kind of intimidating, right? They're like, there's all of this regulatory language and it's all single spaced and it's, how is this organized and what applies to me and what doesn't, and some stuff's bolded and some stuff's italicized. Like, it can just be a lot. For us, it's not a lot, but for the layperson who, say, works in an EPP and is just now trying to get their organization ready for a review, right? It may not be the easiest for them to read. And it may not be easiest for our team and our reviewers to use COMAR as written, as presented, let me say, as kind of a checklist for our reviews. And so what we did was we went through the COMAR 13A0706 line by line. And what we did is we said, what themes are we seeing across here? How could we categorize this in a way that makes it easy for reviewers and EPPs who are getting reviewed to really use it like a checklist, right? That we can say that, okay, here's an item that the state wants. Did they do that or did they not do that, right? And so ultimately, we built what you see on the left-hand side, which are 5 essential components. And these are the 5 largest themes we saw across that COMAR. Literacy in the science of reading, comprehensive instruction, cultural responsiveness, partner schools and clinical experiences, and accountability and compliance. And so we said, okay, those are the main themes, and now we can have a 1 through N list of items from the COMAR nested underneath each of those categories. The issue was, after we did that, those lists under each of those categories were still pretty extensive because our COMAR is pretty extensive, right? And so we had to once more subcategorize, which we have on the right side are the subcomponents. So within the literacy and the science of reading, you see a number of subcomponents over there, and same with all of the other essential components. But finally, this slide here kind of brings it all together. We have those large categories, the essential components. They're further subcategorized into subcomponents. And now we have what are the actual indicators. These bullet points that you see in this table are language that most of the time has been taken verbatim from the COMAR. These are the actual items that the EPPs will be assessed against about whether they are in compliance with the COMAR or not. This is COMAR language. There's 1 or 2 times we had to tweak the language just a bit just to make it look grammatically correct in these tables, but 99.9% of them are directly from the COMAR. And so just so you all know, that is what we are evaluating. Our team did not add any criteria into our evaluations outside of what you all have said that they need to be evaluated against. So this slide's a great example of what we would see. We have at the top the essential component, the largest bucket, right, which is literacy in the science of reading. We then have the subcomponent, which in this case is effective literacy instruction. And then we have the actual COMAR language, those indicators, those bullet points, and that's what we would be actually assessing. Are there any questions on this? I know it can be a little confusing.
Go ahead.
This may be too soon, but looking at your previous slide, when you were looking at those themes that you identified, was there a way to, or is this too early, assess the magnitude of each of those components? Like, was one weighted more heavily when looking at the evaluation over others, or were you looking at them all as equal?
We were looking at them as all as equal.
Okay.
Yeah. And honestly, that's just because that's how the COMAR presented it. The COMAR doesn't present one as being more important than the other. So for example, all of our competencies, we have general competencies, literacy competencies, cultural responsiveness competencies. Had anyone, had there been documentation in the COMAR that says, the literacy one is more important than the other ones and should be weighted heavier, we would have weighted it heavier. So that's why. So this is the formal review timeline. I could spend a whole day talking about this, and when we train our reviewers, I will. But that's not today. And you are not reviewers, and we don't have a full day to talk about this. But I did want to, like I said before, just really touch the highlights of what's actually going to happen over this review process. And so to start, we have what we're calling the notification and the program overview phase. And this is where on day one of that phase, literally day one, we're going to sit down with the EPP leadership, and we're going to go over all of this stuff that you're getting right now, right? So we're going to go over all the timelines, all of the documentation, when their due dates are throughout their whole review process, expectations for them, their expectations of us, their expectations of the review team, right? So everyone is going to go into this process eyes wide open. And one of the items that we're implementing in this phase that we saw a lot of other states not do, but a couple of states do, which we thought was a great idea to, I won't say steal, but to emulate, right? Was that you'll notice that phase is 6 months long. And then and what we are doing is we are giving an EPP a 180-day notice before we start any reviews. So we're going to sit with them on day one and say, okay, here are all the expectations. We're all going to sign that we all understand the expectations, and we're going to leave them alone for 6 months to get ready. Now, should EPP start preparing today for the review that's going to happen in 18 months, 20 months, 36 months from now? Of course, right? But we know that people are busy. I live in this world, but EPP leaders have a lot of other stuff on their plate besides this. So we intentionally did this, that if an EPP leader, for whatever reason, can't make it to the technical assistances that we're giving right now, they don't have the time and space to really get trained up on what this review process is before the review, not a problem at all. Really, it's not. We've baked that into the process. So we're going to give you training that you have to have as part of the process, and then we're going to mandatorily limit ourselves to give those EPPs 180 days where we're not even going to look at anything. There's nothing due to us during those time. That is their time to prepare, which is great. That is not in the COMAR. That's something extra that we are putting in there in order to make it, just more palatable for them. After that, there's a cohort and EPP technical assistance. When I use the word cohort, it's because we're actually having EPPs go through this process in cohorts. Right now, our cohorts are 2 EPPs at a time. And the reason we're doing this is because we want EPPs to have a partner who's out there kind of in the trenches with them at the moment, that as they're traversing this process, they have someone else out there they can reach out to and say, how are you answering this for MSDE? What does your evidence look like? Like how are you interpreting that MSDE wants X, Y, or Z? Can they reach out to us to ask those questions? Of course they can. But it's a different perspective when it's someone else who is also going through a review with you, and they can collaborate and they can talk. So they don't have to. EPPs are more than welcome to go through this alone and unafraid, right? If that's what they want to do. But we wanted to systemically build in the opportunity for them to collaborate if they wanted to. So with that, after that 180 days has passed, we're going to have 2 months where it's going to be a lot of technical assistance. This is where we're going to determine. This is where we're going to describe to them what is due in the next phase. So for each phase that they have something due to us, there's technical assistance before that phase. So there are clear-cut expectations of what is due next. So we're not holding their hand, but we really are guiding them every step of the way. In this phase in particular, this is, this is where I envision us doing a lot of, IT troubleshooting. This is where I'm going to say, hey, here's where you submit your documentation. Here's what correct documentation looks like when you submit it. Let's troubleshoot this. Who do you want to submit documentation? Let's make sure they all have accounts. Let's make sure those accounts all have the right access, right? Let's make sure you have all the right forms. And so this is a part where we can do all the troubleshooting, because the next phase that I'm going to go to now is when they're actually submitting all of their documentation to us in a virtual format. So all of that COMAR language that we've chunked out into nice categories for them, they are now going to use those to guide what documentation they're going to submit to us. And they're going to submit to us evidence that they have met each of those criteria that's listed in the COMAR. We are not limiting the types of evidence that they submit. It could be videos, it could be syllabi, assignments, assessments. It could be interpretive dance, for all I care, right? The fact of the matter is, though, that it's incumbent on the EPP to thread that needle for us and show clear alignment as from what they are doing in their programs to what the COMAR is asking them to do. And so in that offsite documentation and artifact submission, that's what they will be doing. They will be submitting items to us. This is going to be an asynchronous exercise that takes place over 4 months, and they're going to submit all their documentation to us. During that phase as well, we're going to start doing surveys, and we're going to start building focus groups in preparation for a site visit. One of the items that we're doing, which I'm excited about, is we're actually going to be surveying candidates, completers who have completed in the past, mentor teachers, and administrators from our partner schools. So this is where the voice of the LEA gets to come into play, right? Because we have all these partner schools who are doing such great work with these candidates while they're in their practicum. So you can imagine if I was to send a survey to a dean in charge of a program and say, how do you think your program is doing? You can probably imagine what that answer is going to be, right? But if I send a survey to someone who doesn't have that tie to the program, if I send it to the mentor teacher who's overseeing a student teacher and we ask them, how do you feel this program prepared this candidate to become a student teacher in your spaces? I might get a more objective answer, right? Or I ask the administrators, hey, this program has been sending these candidates to you. How are they doing? How do you feel that this program is preparing them? And we're going to ask the candidates the same thing, right? How do you feel the experiences that you traversed in your educational part of this has translated and prepared you for this student teaching experience, right? So we are really excited about that. We're also going to build focus groups in preparation for the site visit. And what that is as we're looking at the offsite documentation, as we start to see gaps, as we start to see that there isn't evidence that there's specific COMAR criteria being met, we're going to ask the EPPs to build specific focus groups so that when we come for a site visit, we want to talk about those specific items. Because just because it's not in a syllabus or an assignment and we're not seeing evidence in paperwork, doesn't mean the EPP isn't actually doing the thing that the COMAR says they need to be doing, right? And so we're going to be very strategic in building focus groups that focus on the gaps that were from, from the offsite documentation review. And I think that's going to really help the EPPs have multiple opportunities to tell their story. And I'll talk more about that in a moment. We're then going to do a site visit. It's the box that's there at the top. This site visit is going to last 1 to 3 days. We've designed it in a way that it could be completely virtual. It could be completely on-site. It could be hybrid. States around the country are doing all of those things. The national accreditors, as of right now, are doing virtual visits, right? So it's gonna depend. To be honest, you may be thinking to yourself, well, which one are you gonna do? Which one is best, right? The answer is it depends. Every single program evaluation I've done in my life is unique, right? And so it's really going to depend on how strong was the offsite documentation, how many more questions are remaining, what do we need to see on site. And so it's, what is the availability as well? So when we talked to other states that went virtual, what they told us is when they switched from a completely on-site model to a virtual model, the participation skyrocketed, right? And the amount of interviews and observations and focus groups and perspectives, and from my standpoint, data, all of that is data, right? The amount of data that they got was more robust, right? And so we're keeping that in mind too. It also can depend on the availability of, people in the EPP, as well as availability of our reviewers. Our reviewers could be from all across the state, right? So some people may not be able to make it all the way across the state, but they could absolutely hold some interviews, virtually while the rest of the team goes on site. So we're really leaving this option open, and we're going to address each single evaluation independently. And on that site visit, like I mentioned, we're going to be doing interviews with all sorts of folks, candidates, EPP leadership and staff, we're going to be talking to faculty members. We are absolutely going to go into public schools or the partner schools, to see our candidates in action, see them in their practicum, see how they are relating to the students, see how they're relating to their colleagues, to families, to the community. And I mentioned all these different groups because the COMAR says that they need to build strong relationships with those groups, right? And so that's what we're going to go out and see for ourselves how they're doing. So we're really excited about that. So we are predicting that a normal site visit was going to be 1 to 3 days. It could be longer. It really depends on how much we need to see and how much information we're gathering. If I go back and I look at the surveys, if the survey completion rate is not very high and we're really not getting data that way, that may make our site visit a little bit longer than it would otherwise be. So like I said, everything's kind of in flux. It really depends on the unique evaluation itself for each program. One of the items that I'm really happy that we put in here that most other states do not do is that after the site visit, we're actually giving the EPPs yet another chance to provide evidence to show that they are meeting COMAR criteria. What we noticed is that in a lot of other states, the site visit is like this, it's like this event. It's like capital SV, like the site visit, everything revolves around that. And the issue is, what if the EPP has a bad day? Like, what if the people you wanted to have talk to the reviewers in the partner school, like the mentor teachers, weren't there? What if someone got sick? What if someone had a family emergency? What if someone just said something silly, which was not the most accurate thing, but that's what they told a state auditor, right? Is that the fairest thing for the EPP, that they just had a bad day or a bad couple of days and now it could affect your determination for approval? We didn't think that was fair. And so what we're doing is we're providing 1 more month after the site visit that we're going to provide the EPP feedback, and we're going to say, okay, we looked at your program overview, which was just an overview of the program itself. We looked at your documentation, we looked at your surveys, we looked at your focus groups, we observed your students in action, but when the dust settled, we're still not seeing evidence that this specific COMAR criteria is met. So you have 30 days. You have 30 days. This is like your Hail Mary, right? Your 30 days to get us any other evidence you want that we can consider in this review process. And so unlike other review processes that have happened probably in this state in the past, where they actually where EPPs would get their determination on the day of the site visit, that will not happen under us because the review was not done at that point in time. But we're really excited that that's there. And I can sleep well at night knowing that we're giving our EPPs like every chance we possibly can for them to show us that they provided evidence that they're meeting COMAR criteria. After that, the burden of work shifts to us over here for MSDE and the review team. The reviewers are then going to evaluate all the evidence that they've collected in all these different fora and make a determination of are they or are they not meeting COMAR criteria. They're going to the reviewers are going to write that report. They're going to submit it to my team at MSDE, and we're going to review it. And really, throughout this whole process, my team is playing the role of referee. So we're not reviewers, and I'll talk about reviewers in a moment. But my team is making sure that all the policies, all the procedures of this whole process that's on your screen is being followed, right? And so when we review the report, we're going to look at it for consistency and equity across the board. So if the reviewers are going to say that this piece of evidence is great over here, but it's not good over here, we're going to ask the question, why? Like, why are we inconsistent in what we're considering to be good or not good evidence, right? So once we get that report, we're actually going to send that report without a determination yet, because we're actually not at the end. We're going to send that whole report to the EPP. And they're going to get a whole month to do a factual accuracy review. And they're going to look at the whole report and they're going to say, is there anything that is factually inaccurate in this? So an example would be that, maybe one of the reviewers wrote that, hey, there's a finding here because in your maths program, when we're teaching people to be math teachers, we didn't see any evidence that there were qualified faculty members to teach these courses. This would be the chance for the EPP to come back and say, no, we did. We gave you evidence. Look at the CV of Dr. Smith and Dr. Jones right there. You will very clearly see that they are more than qualified to teach maths courses. And so then we would look at the, anything that comes back from the EPP, we would look at that and make a determination of, were we factually incorrect in that report or were we factually correct in that report? After that, then a determination is made. And I'll talk about determinations in a moment, but that's when a determination is made. The determination is given to the EPP of whether they're approved, conditionally approved, they're on probation, or we are revoking their ability to operate. And at that point, there's all sorts of abilities for there to be rejoinders and all sorts of items, but that's outlined in the COMAR that you all wrote. And to be quite honest, we're at least 2 years away from when we would ever reach that point because we're starting our reviews this September. So I'm not going to go too in depth into what that process is.
Quick question, just for clarity, the targeted submission, is that what you were talking about when, if there's something that reviewers didn't see, that's the opportunity for the EPP? Okay,
Yes,
thank
ma'am.
you.
And conversely, just for the record, if we saw that they met all COMAR criteria, we will provide the EPPs that targeted submission that we will sign that says, you don't owe us anything else, right? So if you're an EPP and you get that, that's a really great sign, right? Because at that point, I can't come back and say, you're approved with conditions or you're on probation, because you're going to have a signed document from my team that says, we have all the evidence we need. We're good. So that should help alleviate some trepidation and some fears from EPPs while they won't have their official determination yet. If you get a targeted submission item back from us that says we don't need anything else, you can probably figure out where this is going to end, right? It's going to be very positive for the EPP. So this is my favorite slide of this whole presentation. It's because I'm a huge nerd, and I love the fact that we are triangulating data from multiple sources. So whereas, as I alluded to before, whereas other states and other organizations do these reviews and they really count on one or two large events like a site visit to really capture all their data, we don't. We actually have multiple opportunities for EPPs to demonstrate compliance with the COMAR. We have a program overview, which is tell us all about your program, tell us about your faculty, tell us about what degrees do you offer, how many students do you enroll, what is your sustainability plan, all those items. To everything else I talked about, their offsite document and artifact submission, their surveys, their on-site visit, their interviews, their focus groups, the observations, the targeted submission, even the factual accuracy report. We don't look at any one of these as more or less important than the other. Rather, what we are doing is they are all different avenues of us to collect data and for us to have a nice holistic look at an EPP. So if in one of these areas, like the evidence is weak, that the EPP is compliant with the COMAR, but in all of the other areas it's very strong, we're good, right? We're really good. And so I really enjoy this because I think it's the fairest to the EPPs. And conversely, if there's a finding that they're not compliant with the COMAR, it's a finding, right? Because we have looked at that EPP from 6 or 7 different angles at this point, and we're just not seeing the evidence here, right? So it's not like you just had a bad site visit or the documentation you submitted was just happened to be incomplete. If there's a finding, it's because it's just truly not there for us to see. And of course, on top of all of this, we are doing technical assistance throughout this entire process. So before every single phase that the EPP owes something to us, we have a mandatory technical assistance that they must attend where we walk them through what do they owe us, when do they owe it to us, and how should it be presented to us. These determinations came from the COMAR, that came from you all. There should be nothing new in here for you. If they're fully approved, that's going to be a 5-year approval. If they don't meet all of the conditions of the COMAR, then they're not going to be fully approved. And that's just because that's what the COMAR says. Full approval means they have met all of the state requirements, right? So below that would be conditionally approved. So if they've met some, but they still got some work to do, they're going to be approved, but it's going to be approved with conditions. And we're going to say, hey, look, we got it. This COMAR really just went into effect April 1st, 2024. You got some cleanup to do over here. We got some items to fix over here. But so we're going to approve you, but within the next 2 years, and we would work a timeline out with that EPP that says over the next 2 years, let's get together. And once you show us that you've fixed the things you need to fix, we're going to bump you up to full approval and you're going to get that 5 years. Probation and revocation are kind of the most impactful, I would say, negatively on the EPPs. Because if an EPP goes on probation, that means they can't enroll new students, right? So at that point, we are making a determination that putting a new student into this program is not good for the student. Like there's something going on in this EPP where we cannot recommend to Marylanders that they send people to this program, right? And then revocation, which nobody wants, would be that the program shuts down entirely. It's very rare. That peer-reviewed research I talked about at the beginning of this, we looked a lot about, how often does that happen? Not from accreditors, but from the states that do state reviews. How often do states really put people in a probation or a revocation status? And forgive me if I can't remember the complete citation, although there is a complete citation at the end of this whole presentation, and it's in your slides as well. But one of the studies that we looked at was a meta-analysis of state reviews for EPPs for 4 or 5 different states. And they looked at something like 14 or 1,500 different programs. And of those 14 or 1,500 reviews that happened, it was like 4 that ended up in a probation or revocation status. So unless we in Maryland are completely out of line with what's going on with the rest of the country, which I do not believe, I'm really not staying awake at night worried about probation or revocation. And for any of our EPP leaders that are watching this, I hope that they can take some solace in that as well. So who are these reviewers going to be? We are mirroring what our partners across the nation are doing, as well as the accreditors, and these are going to be comprised of volunteer experts and professionals. So they can be EPP staff and faculty, teachers, administrators, or specialists. In fact, a lot of our accreditors say that they will have at least one currently one active teacher, one teacher who is currently teaching as a profession on the review team. It could be people from MSTE, it could be our staff, or professionals with expertise in their field. They could be from nonprofits, professional organizations, et cetera. And so people have asked, like, what would that be? So if there was somebody out there who was like a recognized expert in the science of reading and literacy, and for whatever reason, they're like, hey, we would love to be a part of your review team to look at your literacy stuff. Yeah, if they're a recognized expert out there, like, we have no problem bringing them on. If they're not from Maryland, I may be asking, why do you want to come to Maryland and be on our review team? But that's a different conversation. But the point is, we're leaving the door open for experts and professionals from a variety of areas to come on our teams. One of the best practices that we learned from other states, one of the questions I asked of what would you do differently? And one of the states said the diversity of our review team, that it was very homogenous as far as who was on there, and diversity in all respects, diversity of thought, diversity writ large. And so we wanted to keep this as open as possible for our reviewers, to not limit where they can come from. Now, are we going to vet them to make sure that they are professionals and that they are well versed in whatever we're going to have them review? Absolutely, right? But we wanted to open the door as wide as possible to allow, pretty much anyone who wanted to come on board to try to come on board. Yes, ma'am.
Just a quick question, and were you going to share what the process is for soliciting volunteers?
Sure. I mean, so that's going to be the second half. I mean, I was going to talk about it at the end, but I can talk about it right now. That's fine. So throughout the second half of this year, that is my plan, is to do like a recruitment blitz, is what I've been calling it, right? Right now, we have a Google form that's out there that I've started to put out there in our technical assistances with the EPPs, and it's really just the first round of evaluations that we would have of people who want to be reviewers for us. And if you want, we can make sure that everybody on the board here gets a link to what our first form looks like. But what I would like to do is build a bench of people that we can call upon and really categorize them and say, okay, these are literacy experts. These are experts in cultural responsiveness. These are experts in pedagogy or mathematics or whatever we want to look at, right? And then as we have reviews come up, we can dive into to that bucket of people. I can reach out to them and say, hey, would you be willing and ready to be on a review team for this period of time? So that's the goal, right? We aren't starting our first reviews that we would need reviewers for. The reviews are going to start in September, but that's going to be that 180-day notice. So to be fair, I don't need reviewers until calendar year 25, but that's quickly going to be here, right? So the second half of this year, that is my plan, is to build that bench and hopefully enter into January 2025 with a solid list of people. It's not going to be the most extensive, but it should be extensive enough, right, for what we need. And then from there, if you have any ideas, ma'am, I'm happy to listen to them, and anything anyone wants to do to help us out to get more reviewers, I would be appreciative. I will be honest, out of this whole process, this is the part that I'm like the least happy with, right? This is what everyone's doing across the nation. So all these other states and accreditors, they're soliciting volunteers to be reviewers, but that's just it. They're volunteers, right? In the military, we would say that hope is not a course of action, right? And so this is the only part, I don't have a full-time review team here. And so just truth in advertising, right? That we are going to make this work. It's going to happen. Every other state does it. There's no reason we can't in Maryland. But it is going to involve like a recruitment effort for sure. And before I forget, since it's still on the slide, we are going to have training for all of our reviewers. We're planning for it to be about 3 to 5 days long in total. And we're going to look at things like unconscious bias training. We're going to familiarize them in depth on the COMAR and any other governance that governs EPPs. And a lot of it is going to have them calibrating. It's going to have all of our reviewers calibrating extensively on all of the COMAR criteria that we're going to be evaluating, so that we know when we go into a review, when they are looking at something, that everyone's looking at the same thing in the same way. And all of this is going to be documented and tracked. We're going to get feedback from everybody. It's going to be, we're really excited for it. Okay, this is the last section. It's pretty quick. Annual reporting requirements for the EPPs, the next steps that our team's going to be taking, and then any contact information from us that we can present to you, I'll put up on the screen. I'm not going to read every bullet on this slide. The long story short on here is, in the COMAR that came out of this body, there are reporting requirements that all EPPs, whether they are accredited or not, have to abide by. And so just wanted to make sure you all had a warm fuzzy that, yes, we are absolutely going to make sure that all EPPs are submitting all the criteria that's in COMAR 13A0706 at the individual level to us on an annual basis.
Good morning.
Oh, yeah. My colleague is going to speak up.
Yes, ma'am.
I can't see I don't.
Oh,
So
Ebony, is that you? Dr. Terrell Shockley, is that you?
Yes, I don't know if my camera is projecting. I don't use Teams a lot, but I'm doing my best. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Pardon me if I'm interrupting and you can't see my hand. I just wanted to share that I sent a document out this morning with comments because I can't make the meeting, and one of the comments was about this particular slide. And thank you, Jason, for what you're sharing and for what you're doing. I just wanted to sort of ask about support for the annual reporting, particularly in the area of employment of educators that IHGs are expected to document. And I don't know if we're going to call it TPAR still, but there had been conversation recently about joining with the Department of Labor. MSDE was going to connect with them, or Impact. I don't remember the agency, perhaps MSDE, since I don't know. But it's difficult for IHGs to report on the employment and retention information of individuals who have since graduated. Certainly, there are opportunities through like an alumni relations sort of connection, but it's difficult, I would imagine, for any entity to gather information on individuals who have left that entity. And so just wanted to sort of make that point, and then also ask if there were any updates to that collaboration with the Department of Labor or some other entity that would have, excuse me, the information requested. Thank you, everybody.
So that was a whole lot. Can you break it? If you're going to answer it, can you just do it in sections so we make sure we catch everything?
Oh, I have such an easy answer.
Oh, okay, great.
It's a written document.
So I don't have an answer for you today. It's actually my answer on that, because that's really a Kelly Meadows level engagement that's happening. And so she's not here at the moment.
Yeah, here she is.
Did everybody receive the document that I emailed? It's also in there if that would be helpful.
Yes, we did receive the document, Dr. Shockley, but we were kind of going through the presentation, and so I did see it, but I was going to wait to the end to answer your question, but since we're here, we can answer it now. But as Dr. Keys just said, I think it's a Ms. Meadows question.
Okay, and Kelly's not there, right?
Nope, here she is.
Here now.
No, she-
Do you mind repeating the question?
Dr. Shockley, oh, go ahead. Dr. Keys.
So Kelly, the question was in regards to getting employment data for completers. She had heard in the past that we were going to collaborate with the Department of Labor to potentially get that data, and so she was asking, is there an update as to where we're at on that collaboration?
Okay. So I do believe I understand what is being asked. So We are working with our colleagues at MLDS, the Maryland Longitudinal Data System Center. They have data from the Department of Labor that they often use. They have data that they collect from our department, and they have data they collect from the Maryland Higher Education Commission. So we are working with both MLDS and MHEC to determine, is there data that is being collected already that we could potentially tap into to make the connection to employment, because we do collect staffing data from our LEAs. So the challenge has always been making the connection between the candidate and employment, because every institution of higher education has their own unique identifying numbers for those candidates. So so that is very much still in the works, but I do not have any solid information for you as far as exactly how that will work.
Dr. Shockley, did that answer your question? I mean, you didn't get an answer to the question, but you got an answer to the question. Did that answer your question or your concern?
Well,
I'm
as
sorry, and I
long
can't
as
see you, so I feel like I'm talking blindly. So please
you can't
let me know. No, we're presenting the presentation, so I can't see you, but please keep talking.
Yes, so thank you. As long as all entities are aware that the annual reporting requested from IHEs includes information that IHEs may not have, I think that's the best we can do. And let's keep going. Thank you, everybody.
Go ahead.
All right, so this is a timeline of where we're at today and really what we've worked on at the beginning of the year and where we're going next. At the beginning of the year, we stood up this team in full on January 10th. And the edict by my boss to my right over here, Ms. Meadows, was April 1st. April 1st, you have to design and develop and be ready to implement all of this stuff. We had brand new regulations, which means we had nothing, right? So 83 days later, 57 work days later is what it took us to get all of this, but we met her deadline. And so we did all of this work in that really short amount of time, considering everyone was brand new to MSDE, brand new to each other, right? This wasn't an already established team in an already established organization with already established regulations, right? Like everything was new. So I was really proud of Mr. Krempel and Dr. Ashby Bay and Kelly and Alex, my whole team, that we were actually able to pull this off, right, and get a state review and approval process done in time for those regs to go live. Behind the scenes, and what you're not seeing today, but it's on our website, is, while we're talking about the design and development and implementation of this process, behind the scenes, there's all sorts of documentation that we had to develop that goes along with this, right? All of the worksheets, matrices, handbooks, documents, whatever it is that you need to actually make this happen, we also had to build all of that. So the first half of the year has been all of those things. So you're going to see verbs on there like crafted, built, created, right? And words like new on the left-hand side of this timeline. On the right-hand side, we're now refining, finalizing, and really implementing is where we're at. So the second half of this year, we're now neck deep in technical assistance with EPPs all around the state. We've had a number of in-person and virtual technical assistances. There's still more that are coming online. The other thing we've done is at this point we've implemented a monthly newsletter that we send out to all the EPPs where we talk about the news in their world as it relates to us, upcoming technical assistance. We've started to give EPPs a heads up of who's going to be coming due for reviews all the way through 2027, right? So we're incredibly excited about this. And so our first reviews, that first 180-day notice is going to happen this September, which means our reviews are going to happen in earnest in March. So we're incredibly excited about this. And we would not have been able to get here without, support from our NASDAQ partners, our partners across the, across the nation. MHEC's been a great partner for us. And of course, our bosses here, like Kelly and Alex, have been nothing but supportive this entire time. So and lastly, I do want to say the grace that the EPPs have given my team for this first half of the year has been monumental. As you can imagine, some of them were looking at us and they said, okay, here are these guys and gals, build in the process by which they're going to review us. And we had to tell them, like, hey, we kind of need to go radio silent in some cases and really just put our nose to the grindstone and get to work. And they were so gracious to give us that time and space and let us get to work. And then I feel that our team did a great job fulfilling our promise to them. And what we told them was, we will, accept any feedback we can get from you once we have, items of substance to actually present to you, right? And so it's been great, and that's where we're at now. Is we're doing technical assistance on this whole process. EPPs have tons of opportunity to provide us any feedback that they have, and we're going to get ready to launch this initiative come September. Our contact information is here on this slide. It's also in your slide deck as well. If you ever want to reach out to any of us, we're all now best friends, right? So you can write me whenever you want to, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have on this process. If you would like, a more in-depth technical assistance for your organization, any member of our team is more than willing to come out and talk to you and help you all out understanding this process. And with that, I will conclude my presentation. Thank you.
I feel the need to clap. Thank you so much, Dr. Keys, for that presentation. I think, and speaking for the board, we can appreciate the thoroughness for the presentation. Like, now we know exactly how this works. I live in a world of K-12, but moonlight for post-secondary. But I do want to open the floor for questions, clarification, anything for our I8 members of the board who are day-to-day within IHE, just anything that questions, concerns, anything. Dr. McGee?
First of all, thank you. This is amazing. I took copious notes. I will be finding the section on the recording and sending it out to my team. This was really very helpful. I have a really simple question, I hope. The monthly newsletter, who exactly is that going to? Would we expect that to go to our dean? Is that going to,
Sure. Yes, ma'am. So we've sent one out in April and one in May, and I'm about to send the June one out, and we've been sending those out to the deans and directors.
Is there any way for anybody else to get on that email chain?
We can,
Or is that just,
I mean,
No.
there's no close hold information on there, so I'm happy to talk to you offline about that. But yeah, there's nothing.
hey, you said we're best friends now.
Yeah,
You're
yes,
gonna be
ma'am.
sad about that. No, I promise.
So we send it to so we have points of contact who each of the institutions have told us that these are the people that they want to be the
Sure.
points of contact for our team.
And that's who I want to speak
And-
about, not me necessarily, but the folks
Yes, ma'am.
that
So
I'm
we're sending it
representing.
to them, and we're expecting that those people that we're sending them to are sending them out to their faculty and staff. So we can talk more offline about
Okay,
that for sure.
thank you, and thank you again. This was amazing.
Yes, ma'am.
My other IHE board members, Dr. Kirby, Dr. Allen, Dr. Shockley, are you still on the line? Oh, she's not. Okay. Anyone else? Any questions, comments? Oh, okay. Go ahead, Dr. Taylor.
During your presentation, many of the things that you said, I don't know about the other IHEs here, but for our national accreditation, it seemed like this would help with their accreditation with someone like Kate, used to be in Kate, because we had to do the same things. And I know in Cape, we still have to do many of the same things and many of the things that you said here. So if we as IHEs, educate, because with teacher preparation, administrative preparation, and all that, go through this, we probably wouldn't have a problem when it comes to our national accreditation and reporting and recording, because we have to do exactly what you have said, correct? Well, thank you. Yes. So thank you.
And this is very comprehensive. And one thing that I can appreciate is that extended 30-day piece that, okay, maybe you missed this, maybe you missed that, because I wish the auditors in the state would do something like that. And hopefully that can be a trajectory for other things. Going back to Dr. McGee's point, if there could be an opportunity to extend the way how others get the newsletter or the information, because deans and program coordinators sometimes just forget. They just have a lot of emails and a lot of things on their plate. And even if the institutional accreditor office, whatever that might be called, on a particular campus could also be added. And if there are any academic provost liaisons to accredited programs, that could also be helpful as well. And, and definitely I think this recording somehow should go out, but also if there could be a day of support for not just deans and chairs, but also bringing in that faculty level, because at the most part, it's going to be that faculty level that's going to really have to do a lot of this work. And even with some of the accrediting officers in the research office for the universities and provosts as well. because provosts really need to hear this.
So, Dr. Keys, since we're friends now, can I ask just as chair, because I'm very inclusive here, and knowing that all the stakeholders and the wealth of knowledge and experience that this board brings, can I ask that newsletter go out to our IHE people on this board? Because often I do ask, what's going on, and just as we have these conversations, so that we can, if it's in our purview, we can discuss it. Because I do know a couple of months back there were some concerns about technical assistance, and now looking at this presentation, like, this is great. And so sometimes we need to have the conversations, but if the people on this board just are not, it's just helpful so that we can have a well-informed discussion sometimes.
Yeah, so absolutely. So that newsletter is something we just created to send out to people. It's not necessarily that this is, dean-specific information, director-specific information. So what I'm hearing is
sometimes information, and I'm going to say it as a chair so that the IHE friends don't have to say it, so it's not like they're not specifically getting for their institution. So I'll just say it as a chair. It has been, in my experience, that information doesn't always get to the people who it impacts the most. I think that's the best way to say it. And so sometimes when we have conversations or different things with our EPPs, sometimes my role as chair is that sometimes I'm having conversations, and just because I want to know, so I'm well informed, because by day I don't work for these programs, so I want to be well informed. And so conversations that I have offline is that the information is not being, I don't want to say shared, but the people that they're not getting the information. And so when we have these meetings and things are being presented, and so this is how it's supposed to go, but we know that it's not happening that way, or some institutions feeling like they are the IHE that's out in the portable, or they feel like some of the bigger institutions are getting more attention. And so I think it's just something to keep in mind when we're having these conversations, and you've been watching for a year, so you know that we have very robust conversations and dialogue here.
Yeah, not a problem. So I've heard two items here, right? Between the three, I've heard the problem, which is that we want to make sure that the information is spread far and wide, right? That the problem is that it is not being spread far and wide enough, potentially. And then I've heard a proposed solution, which is expanding the email list. What I can take away from this, if this works for you all, is let me focus on that problem, right? That may not be the best solution. Just putting more people on an email may not be the best solution, right? What other solutions can, and let me take this back if it's okay, and work with my team. I think what we address is how do we get this information to the widest audience possible, right? Is what it sounds like we want to get. And if we can reach that, then we're good. The solution might be an extended email list. It might be a posting on a website. It might be something else, right? And so if that's okay with everybody,
That is
let me take
absolutely
that
okay.
back, but I will take it back for action.
And we know, and I understand that this is new. Everything is very new. So as you're working this department, is that fair to call it a department, is, up and like running, and you're getting out there. And so some things are just like, there's a pecking order for everything. So it is just something that we've seen over definitely within the last year, as I'm having more conversations with IHEs and just kind of asking them for my own information purposes, that how does this impact you? What does this look like on a day-to-day level? And so I will call and ask someone, like, how does this work? How does this work for you? So like, to help me understand, or this is how it's presented. And so the feedback, and I would never portray the conversations and say which IHEs I've spoken to, but it's we're getting that. And so that's why I'm like, I know, and and just looking at our representation here, that this is some concerns. And so as things are coming across with Comar, and that they're going to be expected to implement, but they're not feeling that sometimes they have the support or a contact person. And it does seem from this presentation, I think it's fair to say that is shifting. That is shifting. And so I think the IHEs that are here, they're super excited about this. So just want to just have the lines of communication open.
Yes, ma'am.
Yep, Ms. Meadows.
So I just wanted to take a moment to really share how proud I am of Dr. Keys and his team. They are phenomenal. They have done, he's definitely not doing them justice, the amount of work that has gone into this in such a short amount of time. And if you didn't hear him say it, they're all new employees. It's crazy. Crazy fantastic. So thank you so much to you and your team. I don't know if when I stepped out to use the restroom, if you told them this, how many technical assistance sessions have you provided so far and will be providing in the next month or so?
Sure. So in total, it's going to end up being about 15 to 20 over a couple of months. And that includes some one-on-one TAs as well. But we've already done, we're probably bumping up against 10 at this point since the beginning of the year. But it's really, now that we have substantive items to talk about, it's increasing in earnest. So
Absolutely, which is just on top of all of the other work, which is an important part of the work, is making sure that we are training and providing the guidance to those individuals that need to be responsible for the work. I'm glad you said something in the beginning, Chris, about Juanita coming out to see you. So again, I hope I didn't miss this part, but Keith and Juanita are scheduled to visit every single one of our EPPs across the state in person. There's already a schedule. They are accessible. They will be coming to see you if they haven't already. And so it's not just Frostburg. We don't play favorites, even though we're besties. You're all going to get a visit, and I know Keith is here and Juanita isn't with us today, but they've just done such a fantastic job.
And
Dr. Taylor?
Christine, yes.
That's Chris for the notes,
I know
not
it's
Christine.
Chris. You don't have, what can I say about Juanita? Because she and I work together in
But we already love
accreditation.
her. We already love her. So, and we've had 2 meetings, I just want to say. No
Well,
favorites,
I worked
but
with
2
her
meetings.
for over 3 years.
Now, board members. Go ahead, Dr. Allen.
Yeah, I just also wanted to say thank you. One of the things that was at the forefront of my mind as you were going through the presentation is how humanizing and collaborative this is. And compliance doesn't always have to feel that way. So I thank you and ask you to continue to center that.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. One more question, Derek. Darren.
Yeah.
Darren.
No,
goodness gracious,
I
Darren.
equally.
I was like, Derek.
Seriously? For the
It's
for
the
the notes.
Christine threw me off. That Darren.
No, I love the presentation as well. And I did have one, and I'll tell you one of the things I really like about it is when you said you go to the partner schools and you watch teachers teach and you talk to the mentors and so forth. And my thought is you're gathering such a huge amount of tangible information there. And I guess I'm wondering, and probably, I think you probably already do this, but I'm wondering if all of that information could also go back to the research-informed design slide that's on page 7, where you list, the sources you use to create the criteria. You've got the bullet point for feedback from EPP leaders. You could also have a bullet point for the feedback you get from the actual practitioners, the mentors, and so forth. And I realize that's already in a lot of the studies that you're citing, but that's also information that sometimes doesn't quite get through. Because everybody knows, and I'm going through NCAPE and CAPE as well, you'll realize here's the whole chart of the criteria, but in the classroom, I wish this, to go back to Dr. Zeebly's presentation, I wish they'd teach more of this, or I wish they were looking at this. And that's often, I think, not there because it's not at the front end, it's at the back end. So you've got a wonderful way to do that, and if you are doing it, bravo.
Yeah, thank you, sir. We're excited about that. I mean, it's one thing to see it on paper and see something in a syllabus, and that's great. It's another thing entirely, as you all know, right, to go see these candidates in action, hear from their mentor teachers, hear from the administrators, right, who, quite frankly, aren't getting evaluated, right? So we're going to get a really great objective source of data from them. So we're excited about all of this. We're excited to present this to you. And like I said before, if there's ever any questions you have or any other engagements you want to have with us, we're more than happy to engage with any or all of you.
Thank you. Again, so with that, let's take a break. So it's 11:06. Let's, I don't know, let's 11:20. Let's take a good break. We're ahead of our schedule, so 11:20. All right. Let's break until 11:20. So people at home, we're going to break until 11:20.
is usually 3.
About one more minute.
Well, we can talk later.
I don't believe that every district chooses a teacher of the year because they're a quality educator. They choose a teacher of the year because they're going to be a great spokesperson. I have a nice smile and I'm a bit on a mic. And Cecil kind of picked that up when I was 28. And they said, we're going to put you out there.
Yeah.
And I know hardworking teachers that dedicate hours and hours of every single day that will never be a teacher of the year because they're not great at public speaking.
I see.
So
Mm-hmm.
I think that, yeah, and maybe I'm speaking differently because I think our criteria for my county is unbelievably difficult. Yeah, I mean, it's, oh my gosh, it's a huge
I saw
process.
that. It was like a Senate committee hearing. It was like 30 people sitting around me and me in a glass of water doing an interview. It was intense, but it really wasn't about how great of a teacher I was.
Okay, that makes sense.
All right. I think we're ready to come back together after our short break. We are still ahead on our agenda, so we're going to go ahead and get into our teacher licensure as well as our program approval. Hopefully, maybe, we'll be moving to permission to publish today.
Alrighty. Do you mind if we swap the regs and I do the program approval first? I think it's going to make more sense that way.
Sure.
Okay. All right. So we will start with 13A 07 06 08 state program approval requirements.
And now, Kelly, do you have Dr. Shockley's questions? Do you want me to?
Yeah, if you could, after I review this,
Okay.
take the lead on that,
Yeah.
that would be wonderful. So this, the regulations themselves start, it says State Board of Education Subtitle 07 School Personnel.
This one.
Okay. And the purpose of this item is to request permission to publish amendments to COMAR 13A 07 06 08 State Program Approval Requirements. These regulations should look familiar to the board because this board actually granted permission to publish amendments to these regulations during the February meeting. And at that point in time, we had realigned to the Educator Shortage Act from 2023. So in order to move forward with a motion today, we would first need to hear a motion to rescind permission to publish these regulations from February because we have added more language to align to 2024's legislative session, specifically Senate Bill 771. So putting that out there. So,
Yes.
Do you have how the vote played? Was that a unanimous vote at that time? So
I don't recall. It went through.
Okay, but I think somebody on the prevailing side might have to bring it back, and Sean would be the one to ask.
No, I mean, I think anyone, I mean, I'm sorry. The statutory authority to be able to withdraw regulations is found in State Government Article 10-116A1. What the statute says is we can withdraw permission to publish at any time. And the only caveat being that in order for the regulation to be adopted, it must go through basically it's starting from ground one. You're starting once again at permission to publish, public comment. So I don't think it's required that as far as who makes the motion, but it would basically just be a motion to withdraw permission to publish the old regulation and then followed by an immediate motion, presumably to publish the amended version, if that makes sense. So I guess it's the easy way is probably two motions. One to withdraw the old version, one to
The version from February?
correct, and then a second motion to asking for permission to publish the new one.
Which would be what we're looking at today.
Correct.
Okay. Ready? Okay. So with F, Dr. Shock, oh wait, did you finish with F so I can ask her?
Well, do you want me to go through the regulations?
Yes, and then
The
we can go
amendments?
back and then her questions.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. So let's go ahead and just start. I'm going to go through like I usually do. Every place that's highlighted or red we'll hit and we'll talk about. So starting on page 1 at the very bottom, you're going to see this starts at the bottom and ends at the top of page 2. Training in the skills and techniques for teaching effectively in a virtual learning environment, including the use of online curriculum. This was language that was added in legislative session 2023 as part of the Educator Shortage Reduction Act. So this is part of the language that this board has already seen and voted on in February. Just stop me if there are any questions about any of the changes, please.
Okay.
Next on page 3, where it says exceptions. Candidates in an alternative teacher preparation program for early childhood education may satisfy criteria established by the department that evaluates the knowledge and skills from prior learning relating to early childhood education in place of a practicum. This again was part of the 2023 legislation of the Educator Shortage Reduction Act. On page 4, here we get to language that you have not seen before, and this is stemming from Senate Bill 771 from the 2024 legislative session. So if we start just at E, exit requirements, what we see here is that a provider shall establish exit requirements for programs. That is not new language. What is new is that there is a new section under this area that says enable teacher candidates to beginning July 1st, 2025, complete either a nationally recognized and nationally scored portfolio-based assessment of teaching ability approved by the State Board of Education, or a rigorous local school system teacher induction program that meets the requirements listed in E3 of this regulation. So that second part, a rigorous local school system teacher induction program, is the new language from Senate Bill 771, which provides that alternative way to meet the pedagogical requirement in lieu of the nationally recognized, nationally scored portfolio-based assessment. So we've rearranged that language so that it is an or. And you see the red text that was stripped out was what it looked like before, where it was just the nationally recognized portfolio-based assessment as the option.
Darren, you had a question?
Yeah, and the or that was inserted, that is because it has to align with the Senate bill? The Senate bill
Correct.
does say or,
Correct,
So we don't have
yes.
any choice. Yeah, because as you know, like meeting before last, there was some concern over that with the equity, but that's something that would have to be changed
At the legislature, yes.
okay, got it. Yeah, we don't really have a choice on that.
And then if we come down to 2, candidates who complete an approved program in the state who passed an approved portfolio-based assessment will not be required to take the assessment more than one time. That is not new language. That did not change in the law, but just as a reminder, these are for the candidates who are dual major candidates. So if they take, let's say, the EdTPA or the PPAT, and let's say it's an early childhood elementary dual program and they do it in early childhood, we cannot require them then to take the assessment again in elementary. So that's kind of in the middle, that stays. And then we come down to 3, which is new language. A local school system induction program under E1. So what I just spoke about, that or the induction program, this is where it talks about what it needs to look like, again, from the language of the law. A local school system induction program under E1C2 of this regulation shall A, be developed by the local school system, either independently or collaboratively with other local school systems. B, be approved by the MSDE. C, last the lesser of 3 years or the amount of time a teacher holds a conditional license, which is never less than 3 years, because right now our minimum conditional is 3. It goes all the way up to 5. Induction programs are already required to be 3 years in this state. And then I just see a typo here. This should be D, not C. Include a local developed portfolio component that is aligned with the Interstate Teacher Assessment and Support Consortium standards. Again, from the law. And then finally, if we look down at F3, again from the law, a locally developed portfolio established under E3 of this regulation may be used to meet a portion of the coursework requirements of this program. And that is, there is no further definition or information regarding that line in the law, so we have taken it verbatim.
Okay. Dr. Kirby?
So I guess with this being the law, I'm looking at 3A, be developed by a local school system, either independently or collaboratively. Would that not give them the opportunity to work with a college, university to partner?
We see no reason why an LEA cannot collaborate or partner with an IHE in the development of a portfolio.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
Okay, so Dr. Shockley, since you are here, do you want me to read through your questions and comments, or since you are here, do you want to do it? I don't know how much time you have.
If you don't mind reading, I'm about to walk with my laptop, and I'm gonna try to stay on as long as I can.
No,
I
no
appreciate
worries.
it very much.
I'm happy to read
Thank
it. Okay, so the first one was under credit requirements, which I think is F on the page 2, I think. So her, in terms of, make sure I'm in the right place because I don't see this. Am I on
It's the very last
page
line.
4? Sorry. Yep. Make sure I'm in the right place. Okay. The credit requirements. How come F1? Okay, sorry, I was trying to locate it. Okay, so her question and comment is, given the repeal of regulations that articulate the number of credits a discipline requires for licensure, for example, special education, should EPPs refer to the language that is more general regarding what a program requires, or is it expected that there will be a return to the number of credit hours, for example, 6 hours of reading?
Sure. So, and it's, let's see. I'm going to point us, it's going to be easier to answer this while you guys are looking at the language. So if you turn to page 1. So state program approval requirements, this entire regulation is all about, the requirements of how that program is developed and implemented. So if you start with C, standards and competencies. And as you all know, there are many national standards incorporated by reference in the regulations that you don't see before you today. And there are many competencies on the back end of these regulations, again, that we're not looking at today. So what this regulation says is that programs have to align to both those national standards and the competencies that we adopted. There are places in this section C, if you look on 2, where it does detail, like, for example, early childhood and elementary programs have to have content in, social studies, science, ELA, and mathematics. But these regulations do not quantify credit hours for content areas. And the reading courses that I think that Dr. Shockley is talking about, she'll correct me if I'm wrong, so like the 12 credits and the 6 credits that were a requirement under the old regulations do not exist any longer. So it is up to an educator preparation program to determine, will we continue to use those courses as they are developed, or will we align to the competencies and standards in another fashion? And that is up to the EPP.
Thank you. The other question, Chair Kitchen, if you don't mind reading, is specific to what you just shared, Kelly, about national requirements, because there's some language there about CAPE in the beginning of the regulation, which uses the terms incorporation by reference that also, if you don't mind answering, since we're going to be voting on permission to publish. Thank
Nope,
you.
you're fine. I didn't realize that I was looking at the back of the paper and not the front, so my apologies. All right, so
It was perfect. There's just one other piece. Thank you.
No, so the other one goes with the exit requirements under E. Let me just get there, sorry. Second. Eyes are not working. Okay, here we go. Okay. So her question or comment with the exit requirements, this reference, .03, aligns the elementary program to the CAPE standards. Given that ACEI is no longer aligned to the elementary standards, with all programs need to align to CAPE standards, even if they are seeking AAQEP approval. A lot of letters there.
No, I'm sorry.
I was like,
So basically, Kelly, you were just talking about the sort of move that the state has, or the shift of the state to saying, actually, you need to do this, this, and this, but not scripted in the credit hours. With that said, when we are moving and making sure we're aligned to national standards, there is language that I put a screenshot somewhere in the document showing that in 13A0706 under the 03 subsection, it specifically lists CAPE. And we used to refer to people, meaning non-CAPE accredited EPPs, used to refer to ACEI because we're not CAPE, but for those seeking AQEP through, right, once the state, if the state accepts AQEP or CAPE, but either way, we have institutions that are not CAPE institutions. So we just wanted to bring that to the attention of the group. And
Sure. No, I'm happy to comment on that. So currently in the incorporation by reference regulation, which is not a part of what we're voting on today, to be clear. And in fact, I plan to bring you next month because we do need to update it. And the team has already done that. But for the CAPE section specifically, currently as is, yes, all programs are required to align to those standards, those national standards. So I will bring that back next month, and we can definitely have a more robust discussion about the changes that we're recommending.
thank you. The agenda just said 13A0706. It was not clear that we were focusing on only the highlighted parts. And so since it was broad, I wanted to bring it up. And if we're going to talk about it at the next meeting, then we can move to that. CAPE does not give clear feedback either, which is another part of the problem, but we can talk about it in July. Thank you for answering the questions.
Were there any other questions? Nope. Okay. All right, so make sure I get this all right here. So we need a motion at this point to rescind 13A
070608.
070608 that was approved, can I just say February of 2024? Versus, okay. So, yes, go ahead, Dr. Taylor.
I move to rescind 13A 0706 that was voted on in February 2024.
08.
08.
070608
08.
that was approved in February of 2024.
Right.
So, seconded by Dr. Bolson. All in favor to rescind COMAR 13A 070608 that was adopted in February. Yes, thank you for putting your hands up. All in favor, right? Any I don't know why I can't think today. Any objections? Any abstentions? Motion carries to rescind the regulations 13A 070608 from February 2024. Now we need a motion to approve 13A 070608 as of June 2024. Right, is that right?
Yeah, just a motion for permission to publish.
Oh, thank you. A motion, so the chair will entertain a motion for permission to publish Comar 13A 070608 as of June 2024, as proposed June 2024.
I move permission to publish Comar 13A 070608 as of June as amended by conversation today.
Second.
Seconded by Dr. So motion by Dr. Poston, seconded by Dr. Taylor.
Chair?
Yes.
Yes, can I ask that we continue discussion just for a moment before voting, now that the motion's been made?
Yes,
All right, and may I offer a comment?
correct.
All right, so I will vote for this because I think we have to put it in alignment with statute. So that makes perfect sense to me. That being said, I do want to acknowledge that the final part about the portfolio-based assessment is problematic. And that's because when we look through it, and remember, we did convene a work group to recommend some input into a possible law, which already took place, that a local school system has to have a portfolio-based component, which I applaud. The IHE has to also have a portfolio-based assessment, but we're only requiring the IHE to use a product in order to prove that. But we're not doing it for the locals. And remember, EdTPA and PPAT are products. Those are products for assessment. So you can have, I think, a very robust portfolio-based assessment, which I fully support, but it seems odd to require one to do it and one not, especially when we've been very conscious of creating multiple avenues for licensure, not lesser avenues for licensure. So that remains problematic to me. Now, I also recognize the rigorous input that we've had from a variety of constituents. So I also want to say, I think we as a board listen carefully to that, and it's not something where we certainly want to require schools to do it or not require, but allowing students or schools that want to use it, particularly for their assessments and their accreditation, they could certainly continue. So making it voluntary, I think, would be good, and that would solve most of the problems. But right now, the way the law is written is problematic to me. So I think later on, we might want to revisit that to see if we can make some recommendations on how potentially that could be rectified. But again, I will vote for it, but I had to point out that obviously this is very problematic.
Kelly? Oh, I thought you were going to say something. Any other questions? So we need to vote now, correct? Okay. So motion on the floor is to permission to publish 13A 070608 as discussed today, as in June of 2024. All in favor? Any objections? Any abstentions? Motion carries to publish, permission to publish 13A 070608. Pathways to licensure.
All right. The purpose of this item is to request permission to publish Comar 13A 120203, Pathways to Teacher Licensure. The regulations themselves start with the words Pathways to Teacher Licensure, .03. So if we take a look at A1C, we see new language. So this is all about Maryland approved program pathway to licensure. One Maryland approved program is how it starts. So everything underneath of it here is what you would need as a Maryland approved program completer to earn licensure. And we now see documentation of one of the following. Passing scores is established by the State Superintendent of Schools on a basic literacy skills assessment as approved by the State Board of Education. And minimum overall cumulative grade point average of, that's an OR, 3.0 on a 4.0 scale on the most recently earned degree, or 3 years of effective evaluations from a local school system in Maryland. So these are the options now for meeting what is called the basic skills or basic literacy skills is how it's listed in the law of this particular pathway. So Praxis Core, SAT, ACT, GREs. These are all assessments that we have traditionally taken to, if you're coming in with the assessment. Still allows that. That's 1, passing scores as established. 2, minimum overall cumulative grade point average of a 3.0 and a 4.0 scale. We've been doing this for many years, but now it is codified in statute. And then the new one, or 3 years of effective evaluations from a local school system in Maryland. So that is now a way to meet that basic skills proficiency requirement. The next 3 highlights are just changing the letters associated with, it's no new language. And then we come down to F. Beginning on July 1st, 2025, meet one of the following qualifications. 1, passing score as established by the state superintendent of schools on a nationally recognized portfolio-based performance assessment approved by the state board. This is not new language, it's just written in a different way. Or, this is the new language, completion of a comprehensive local school system teacher induction program that meets the requirements listed under C2 of this regulation. This is identical to the regulations that we just looked at.
Ellie, I'm sorry to interrupt. And can you just back up for a quick second? And the C, the documentation of one of the following, you had said or, but did you mean like the CI, passing scores as established by the state superintendent of schools, basic literacy skills? Is that an or after that, or minimum overall cumulative grade point average, or is it is a semicolon?
It's a semicolon, and it should be read as or.
Okay, it should be read as or. Okay.
Yes.
You just have or for the other, so I just want to make sure. Okay, thank you.
Sure. Any questions about that section?
Is it a reason why it doesn't say or?
Yes, it is the way that regulations are written. So you should go by the last. So see how there's an or after earned degree.
Mm-hmm.
So everything above that, it should be assumed as an or as well.
Understood.
And if it were an and, everything would, yeah. And yes, we did write one of the following.
I think we're ready to proceed.
All right. The next change we have in district training program, we changed the word district to system, and the reason we did that is because we realized that local school system is how it is defined in the licensure regulations. It's not defined as district, so we just wanted to make that clear and consistent. So we are going to say local school system to match the definitions. It does not change the content. Similarly, if you come down to 2B3, we've clarified bachelor's degree or higher in any field and passing scores where you see that bachelor's degree. So we did get some questions about, well, if they come in into this in-district pathway and they demonstrate their content knowledge by taking the assessment, does that mean they don't need a bachelor's degree? We were assuming that people would understand that it was assumed, but we shouldn't have. So now we're clarifying that no, that's not what it means. You still need a bachelor's degree and you need the content assessment. So we dropped in that language, bachelor's degree or higher, the way that we have it written in 1 and 2. So that's just a clarification. And then on the next page, this should look familiar because, again, it's identical to the language that we just looked at in the program approval regulation. So if you come down to, you're going to see this a couple different places. The first place you see it is under the experienced non-public school teacher pathway. So that previously said, you need to have the 5 years of experience and you need to take the portfolio-based assessment. And then there was an exception that you'll see crossed out later in the regulation that pointed back to this to say, if you are hired and you are issued a conditional, you can do the 1 year, and if you get that effective evaluation, you can substitute that in lieu of the nationally recognized portfolio-based assessment. So those things were already in the regulation, but it was confusing to have the exception and go here and read this and go here. So I struck out the exception, and now everything lives like within that pathway. So an effective or comparable rating on a year-end evaluation is one of the ways if they become employed. Complete a comprehensive induction program is the new language. This is the new content, and it is aligned with what we're requiring for our Maryland approved program candidates. Is that Senate Bill 771 piece of the local induction with the portfolio component as described in the law. And then, 4. Hold a national board certificate. So again, this was an exception. I just moved it into the pathway and combined everything. And then, of course, they can still do the nationally recognized portfolio-based assessment. That hasn't gone away. So again, the new content here is only 3. Complete a comprehensive induction program. And you're going to see that that's defined later in the regulation as it is in the other regulations. So this is non-public school experience pathway. If you take a look at the next page, you're going to see that it's the same thing for out-of-state teacher preparation program, as well as out-of-state license. So again, just moving everything up into those pathways so that you don't have to bop around. And every single one of those pathways has the 4 options of taking the performance assessment, having an effective or comparable rating on a year-end evaluation if you're employed and you have that ability, completing a comprehensive induction program as defined in Senate Bill 771, or holding a national board certificate. And then finally, on the back page, we have the components of that comprehensive induction program as we just reviewed in the other sets of regulations. This is from Senate Bill 771. Any questions?
Any questions or comments? Chair will entertain a motion. Oh, Darren, no question. Okay. The chair will entertain a motion for permission to publish 13A.12.0203, pathways to teacher licensure. I don't think the chair can make the motion.
So moved.
Second. Motion for permission to publish 13A.12.02.03 by Dr. Zebley, seconded by Dr. Taylor. All in favor? Oh, hold on.
Very small point, there's 2 Cs in the last correction.
Oh.
Good catch.
Sometimes I get.
All right, so the current motion on the floor, it was made and seconded. So now all in favor for permission to publish 13A.12.0203. Any objections? Any abstentions? Motion carries. We have permission to publish COMAR 13A.12.02.03, pathways to teacher licensure. That is done.
I know, it's like,
Yeah, all right. All right, July meeting.
No, I don't have.
Oh, okay. So for our July meeting, we have the items that are always at the top of our agenda: call to order, public comments, state board update, communication update, announcement, and approval of the minutes. And so, Kelly, are we going to have the reading presentation?
Yes, my understanding is that we are go for July.
Okay.
I'd also like to present the supply and demand presentation in July that I provided to the State Board of Education this past month.
Is that the ed workforce update? Is that what
Yes.
that is? Okay. Good. I was going to ask that because I wondered if we'd had it.
Great.
Right, it's the second Thursday because of how the fourth falls.
I believe so. Yes.
Yeah, it's July 11th, and I will not be in attendance for that meeting.
Did we decide, was that meeting going to be in person or virtual? I don't have notes. Virtual. Virtual? Virtual it is. Yes, yes, Dr. Dr. Allen?
Yeah. I was wondering, in our July meeting, are we also going to revisit the section that Dr. Shockley was, okay.
Yes, I would like to bring amendments to the incorporation by reference regulation. And we will need to do that annually. It's
Okay.
just as a matter of practice.
And then was that with program approval or was that with the licensure?
It's part of the program approval regulations.
Yes.
Will that mean that we'll have to do a retracting like what we did today again for permission to publish? to
No,
revise?
we have not yet attempted to change those. We were kind of waiting until the very last minute.
And then Kelly, will we have just can we have just a quick update on the admin group if they meet? Are they going to meet in between now and our next meeting? Just a quick update that you gave us today.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can give you during the communication update. I was planning on giving an update on the administrator licensure work group as well as we will have met as a P20 collaborative committee. There is a recruitment and retention work group or committee that has been formed, made up of IHEs and our LEAs, MHEC, lots of acronyms there, and a few others. And we will have had our first meeting, so I'd like to be able to provide an update on that as well.
Okay. All right. Any other additions to the July agenda? Noting now that our meeting will be virtual.
Melita?
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
sorry. Can we also add, will you be able to meet, do you think you'll be able to meet with Liz prior to that?
That is the plan, but because I don't have a meeting date on the calendar with her, I can't say for certain, but that is the plan to have in my communication update to bring back at least some of the conversation that I have with her.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else for the agenda? Yep, Dr. McGee?
Not for the agenda, just, will the time be the same? Like, are we gonna aim for a 12:30?
Yes,
meeting?
I don't think we need an extended
Okay.
meeting. So
Just
12:30, yeah,
you.
9:30 to 12:30. Thank you for clarifying that. 9:30 to 12:30. Missing anything else? It will be virtual. Oh, and let me put this out there now. July and August, looking for those to be both virtual meetings, right? July and August. Yes. All right. Just because I think my brain is thinking about chlorine and cleats, do I need a motion? My child is swimming and playing soccer. Do we need a motion to approve the tentative agenda? I'm thinking no, right? I don't think we normally approve the agenda, right? Because it's being flexible. Okay. So with that being said, it is 12 o'clock, it's like a half day. Look at that, early dismissal for everyone. Right, and you can go have lunch early.
There's lunch in the caucus room. Please take a box before you leave.
Oh.
We thought we were going to have a later meeting today, so.
That's right. So we have So you get to take your lunch to go, or please stay. Motion without any objections. I'm not going to even take a motion. Without any objections, we're going to adjourn the meeting at 12:01 today. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
All this and a box lunch.
And a box lunch. What?